We're all probably used to doing planks, aren't we? Plank is great. It strengthens a lot of different muscles, strengthens your deep ab muscles that control your spine, helps strengthen your lower back, your glutes, your hips. A lot of great things about the plank, but I do want to give you guys a bunch of additional plank variations because the standard plank only gets us so far. Once you get good enough at this more traditional prone plank, you need to start switching it up to keep yourself getting strong and to develop some additional strength, mobility, and athleticism. So let's talk about a couple of those different plank exercises. And when we are talking about these plank variations, one of the reasons why we want to do these plank variations is to develop more well-rounded strength. It's going to help us with injury prevention primarily, and it's also going to just help us get stronger and improve our running form and our performance. But when it comes to the plank, one of the problems with the plank is that it's not dynamic. We are just sitting there in a single position. And if we want to make the plank a little bit more specific to running, one of the best ways to do that is to make it dynamic. Because after all, running is a dynamic motion. You're moving the whole time, clearly. So if we can do a little bit more of that while we're doing a plank exercise, if we can make it a little bit more side specific so that we're focusing on one side of our body rather than on both sides at the same time, that's another way that we can make the plank a little bit more specific to running itself. So you're all familiar with the traditional prone plank. I'm not going to go over that one, but let's go over some variations of the plank exercise so that you know how to keep things varied, how to keep your strength progressing, and how to keep your injury prevention efforts top-notch. All right, here we are. We're going to do our first plank variation. Now, what I do want you to do is instead of having your hands together in front of you like this, we all do that when we are doing a plank. But if you work at a computer, if you're sitting at a desk for a big chunk of the day, then you're really reinforcing this position with your chest to be inward and closed off. We want to open up your chest. So instead of having your hands directly in front of you touching, let's keep them parallel. And so you will notice that when you're doing a plank like this, it's harder. It engages more of your core. And so this is one way that you can make your plank a little bit better, improve your form on the plank, and it will seem a little bit more challenging, but that's because your form is better and you're really engaging more of those core muscles. So when we're in this traditional plank pose, the first variation is to alternate leg and arm lifts. This is fairly advanced. So start with just raising one leg and then the other to get a feel for it, and then raising one arm and then the other. And that'll give you a feel for it. And once you feel like you have some confidence, you can start lifting your left arm and your right leg, and then alternate with your right arm and your left leg. Now the key with this plank exercise is to go slow. Go slow, go controlled. It's not a rush. Speed does not factor into how strong you get with this exercise. And if I move to the side, you'll be able to see both and if you can, try to pause for a second or two at the top of each leg and arm lift so that you can just get a little bit stronger and it improves the exercise a little bit. And by the way, one of the reasons why we want to do that alternating leg arm lift on the traditional prone plank is because it's so specific to running. That's exactly what you do when you're running. You are having your right leg planted down on the ground while your left arm is swinging up, and vice versa. And so it's a very similar motion as running in that it focuses on opposite sides of the body. So very specific to running, exactly what we want. And if you find that that plank is really challenging, you know it's something that you should work on. So our next plank variation is a variation of the side plank. Now, this side plank is pretty traditional. A lot of you guys are doing this regularly. But just like with the prone plank, there's not any movement. And so one of the ways that we can add movement to this exercise is by doing a rotation through the underside of your chest right there. And what we're doing here is we are adding some rotational stress to that side plank, just like you're going to experience when you're running. There's not a lot of rotational stress when you're running, but this is really great at building more substantial oblique strength in your core. Now let's get to our final exercise. The final exercise is called a Spider-Man plank. And we're doing this type of plank exactly for the same reasons as the other planks. It's making it more specific to running. Instead of an isometric muscle contraction where you're just holding yourself in one position that is stressful, we are going to be doing a more dynamic motion. And so you get into a traditional plank position, whether you're on your forearms or you're here in the push-up position. And the goal here is to bring your left knee to your left elbow and your right knee to your right elbow. So that's an example in the push-up position. If we come down in the plank position, again, we want to keep our chest open, keep our arms parallel to each other. We'll come up, and then the same thing. We're going to move our knees off to the side in a slow and controlled manner. Try to keep your back as neutral as possible. And this is another wonderful plank that really works your core in a totally different way. And for anyone who's into core, not just for the injury prevention benefits, the improvements to your form and your performance, but maybe you just want a tight core. Maybe you want some good abs. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's any problems with some side vanity goals that we might have. These plank variations are great at that, because if you've been doing planks for just a couple months, you're going to stop progressing. You're not going to keep getting stronger. And to keep progressing, to keep improving and getting better, just like with our running, we have to do new things. We have to make our exercises a little bit more challenging. So I hope these variations gave you some new things to think about when you're doing your traditional plank exercises. Now we do have a whole routine that has even more plank variations, and there's a PDF download that you can get at the link under this video or in the card here that I think is really helpful. So no matter what kind of planks that you're doing, make sure that you're always varying them and you're working towards making them a little bit more specific to running, because that's just going to make your injury prevention strategies more effective in the long term. So I hope this was helpful. And after you look at that download of all those different plank variations, I want you to tell me which plank variations I might have missed. There are 11 different planks in the Gauntlet Plank workout that is part of that download that you can get at the link under the video, but I know there's more. There's plenty more plank variations out there. So which ones did I miss? Which ones are your favorite? Let me know.